The hidden meaning of middle of night waking. What if I told you that waking up at 3 a.m. isn't insomnia, bad luck, or a sign something's wrong with you? It's your body sending you urgent messages about unprocessed stress, suppressed emotions, and survival threats your conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. Not sleep hygiene advice. Actual documented mechanisms showing that nighttime waking is meaningful communication from your subconscious. This isn't wellness blog nonsense. This is hard sleep neuroscience. Researchers studying sleep architecture and the brain's emotional processing systems have discovered something remarkable. Your brain uses sleep, particularly the vulnerable hours between the four letters M, to process threatening information, consolidate emotional memories, and run threat assessment protocols. When this processing gets interrupted by waking, it's because your amygdala has detected something requiring immediate conscious attention. Here's what changes everything. The timing, frequency, and quality of your nighttime waking contains specific information about what your nervous system is struggling with. Your body doesn't wake you randomly, it wakes you strategically, at moments when specific stress hormones peak or when dream content becomes too threatening to process unconsciously. Ancient healing traditions recognize nighttime waking as spiritually and psychologically significant. Modern neuroscience has revealed the exact mechanisms: cortisol rhythms, REM sleep disruption, autonomic nervous system activation, and emotional memory consolidation failures. I'm about to decode 10 specific patterns of middle of night waking, and what each reveals about your psychological and physiological state, plus protocols to address the underlying causes. Your body is speaking. Time to listen. Body, the 10 Techniquest. Part 1. Cortisol spike recognition protocol. You wake suddenly between 2 to 4 a.m. feeling alert, anxious, and unable to return to sleep. Your heart may be racing. Your mind immediately begins problem solving, ruminating, or catastrophizing. This isn't random, it's a cortisol spike. Neuroscientists studying circadian rhythms have discovered that cortisol, your primary stress hormone, naturally rises in the early morning hours to prepare you for waking. But chronic stress causes premature or excessive cortisol release, which jolts you awake hours before your alarm. Your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is essentially firing your wake-up alarm too early because it's stuck in survival mode. This is technique number 1 out of 10. The cortisol spike recognition protocol. Here's your exact practice for 21 days. When you wake between 2 to 4 a.m. with alertness and anxiety, don't fight it. Instead, spend 5 minutes doing cortisol reduction breathing. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Hold for 2. Repeat 10 cycles. Then write 1 sentence identifying your primary life stressor. The pattern that emerges across 3 weeks reveals what's chronically activating your stress response. The mechanism interrupts the stress-wake cycle. Extended exhales activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which signals your hypothalamus to reduce cortisol production. Naming the stressor engages your prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate amygdala activation. You're essentially telling your body the threat is acknowledged and doesn't require emergency waking. Start tracking your 3 a.m. cortisol spikes and watch the patterns reveal which life areas are keeping your nervous system in chronic threat mode. Part 2. Suppressed emotion surfacing method. You wake with intense emotions: grief, rage, anxiety, shame that seem to have no immediate trigger. During the day, you feel fine. At night, emotions you've been suppressing all day flood consciousness. When your prefrontal cortex's inhibitory control weakens during sleep, research on emotional processing during sleep reveals that REM sleep most concentrated in the second half of the night is when your brain processes emotional memories. Your amygdala is highly active while your prefrontal cortex is relatively quiet. This allows suppressed emotions to surface without the cognitive defenses that block them during waking hours. You're essentially losing the ability to keep emotions buried when your conscious guard drops. This is technique number 2 out of 10. The suppressed emotion surfacing method. Execute this protocol. Keep a dedicated night emotions journal by your bed for 30 days. When you wake with strong emotions, immediately write them down without analysis. Just name them and rate intensity 1 to 10. In the morning, review and ask, what daytime situation might connect to this emotion that I've been avoiding or minimizing? Track patterns between night emotions and unacknowledged day stressors. Why this works: you're creating a bridge between unconscious emotional processing and conscious acknowledgement. By documenting night emotions and connecting them to daytime triggers, You're training your prefrontal cortex to process emotions consciously rather than leaving them. For your sleeping brain to handle, you're essentially catching emotional messages your subconscious sends when defenses are down. Start journaling night emotions. Immediately upon waking and watch suppressed feelings become conscious material you can actually address. Part 3. Unresolved conflict detection technique. Wake with your mind immediately replaying arguments, difficult conversations, or interpersonal tensions. The same scenarios loop obsessively. You can't shut off the mental replay even though you're exhausted. Neuroscientists studying sleep and social cognition have found that your brain uses sleep to consolidate social memories and resolve interpersonal conflicts. Your medial prefrontal cortex and temporal junction regions, involved in understanding others' perspectives, remain active during sleep, working on social problems. When conflicts remain unresolved, this processing becomes hyperactive and can trigger waking. This is technique number 3 out of 10, the unresolved conflict detection technique. Your intervention is specific for 45 days. Maintain a relationship tension log each evening before bed. Write down any interpersonal tension from the day, even minor discomfort or unexpressed disagreement. Rate how resolved it feels 0 to 10. When you wake replaying social scenarios, check if they appeared in your log. If you consistently wake replaying situations you rated below 7, those require direct daytime resolution. The mechanism makes implicit conflicts explicit. Your brain wakes you to process unresolved social threats because your nervous system codes them as survival relevant. By consciously identifying and addressing these tensions during waking hours, you reduce the nighttime processing burden. You're giving your brain the resolution it's desperately seeking through sleep disruption. Start logging daily interpersonal tensions and watch nighttime relationship replays reveal which conflicts need conscious attention and resolution. Part 4. Existential anxiety emergent system. You wake feeling a nameless dread or cosmic insignificance. Not anxiety about specific problems, existential anxiety about meaning, mortality, purpose, or your place in the universe. This peaks at night when external distractions disappear. Research on existential psychology and sleep shows that your brain's default mode network active during wakeful rest and some sleep stages is responsible for self-referential thinking and meaning-making. At night, without external input, this network can spiral into existential rumination. Your brain is essentially confronting ultimate concerns that daily busyness normally suppresses. This is technique number 4 out of 10, the existential anxiety emergent system. Here's your practice when waking with existential dread for 60 days. Implement the 3-level grounding sequence. First, physical name 5 things you can touch, see, or hear right now. Second, temporal acknowledge I am here, now, in this moment. Third, connected recall one person or being you have meaningful connection with. Spend a minute on each level. Then write one sentence about what existential question arose. Why this works. Existential anxiety intensifies the states of disconnection from body, present moment, and others. The grounding sequence reactivates your sensory cortex, prefrontal cortex, and social cognition networks, which counteract the isolated, abstract rumination your default mode network generates. You're pulling yourself from cosmic spiraling back to embodied, connected presence. Start implementing 3-level grounding during existential night waking, and watch nameless dread transform into identifiable concerns you can address. Part 5. Trauma. Reprocessing interruption protocol. You wake from nightmares or with your heart pounding, sweating, or in a state of hyperarousal. You may or may not remember dream content. This happens most frequently during REM sleep when trauma memories are being processed. Neuroscientists studying PTSD and sleep have discovered that your brain attempts to process traumatic memories during REM sleep by replaying them in modified contexts to reduce their emotional charge. When trauma is too intense or recent, this reprocessing can trigger your amygdala's threat response strongly enough to wake you. Your body is essentially interrupting its own healing process because the memory feels too dangerous, even in sleep. This is technique number 5 out of 10. The trauma reprocessing interruption protocol. Execute the sequence for 90 days when waking from trauma-related sleep disruption. Do not try to immediately return to sleep. Sit up, turn on a dim light, and engage in bilateral stimulation. Tap alternating knees or shoulders for 2 minutes. This mimics EMDR therapy. Then write one sentence describing your current physical safety. When heart rate normalizes, The mechanism supports interrupted processing. Bilateral stimulation engages both brain hemispheres, which can help complete the trauma processing your sleep was attempting. Consciously affirming present safety gives your prefrontal cortex information to regulate your amygdala's fear response. You're essentially helping your brain finish the work that woke you up. Start supporting trauma processing during night waking and watch frequency decrease as your brain learns it can process safely. Part 6. Blood sugar. Dysregulation recognition method. You wake hungry, shaky, or with a sensation of internal alarm that eases after eating. This isn't about being hungry, it's hypoglycemia triggering a stress response that wakes you to seek fuel. Research on metabolism and sleep reveals that blood sugar drops during sleep as hours pass without food. In people with dysregulated glucose metabolism, this drop can trigger cortisol and adrenaline release, your body's emergency response to perceived starvation. Your endocrine system literally sounds an alarm to wake you for fuel. This is technique number 6 out of 10. The blood sugar dysregulation recognition method. Your protocol is this. For 28 days, eat a small portion of protein and healthy fat exactly 1 hour before bed. A tablespoon of nut butter, a few nuts, or a hard-boiled egg. Track whether nighttime waking frequency or intensity changes. Also monitor if you wake with physical hunger versus pure anxiety. If protein before bed significantly reduces waking, you've identified blood sugar instability as a contributor. Why this works: protein and fat provide sustained fuel release that stabilizes blood sugar through the night. This prevents the glucose drop that triggers your hypothalamus to release wake-inducing stress hormones. You're essentially giving your body the metabolic stability it needs to maintain sleep without emergency fuel seeking. Protocols. Start the pre-bed protein protocol and watch whether metabolic stability reduces. Nighttime waking frequency. Part 7. Circadian rhythm misalignment detection technique. Wake at exactly the same time every night, often to the minute. It's not insomnia or stress, it's a misaligned circadian rhythm creating a recurring sleep architecture disruption at a specific point in your sleep cycle. Neuroscientists studying chronobiology have found that your suprachiasmatic nucleus, your brain's master clock, orchestrates precisely timed hormonal releases throughout the night. When your sleep schedule conflicts with your natural chronotype, or when you have irregular sleep timing, specific sleep cycle transitions can become destabilized, creating predictable wake times. This is technique number 7 out of 10. The circadian rhythm misalignment detection technique. Here's your intervention for 40 days. Maintain rigorous sleep consistency, same bedtime and wake time within 15-minute windows, even on weekends. Also get bright light exposure within 30 minutes of waking, and minimize light exposure to hours before bed. Track if the predictable wake time shifts earlier or disappears. If consistency eliminates the pattern, you've identified circadian misalignment. The mechanism recalibrates your internal clock. Consistent timing strengthens the signal from your suprachiasmatic nucleus to all your body's peripheral clocks. Light exposure at specific times reinforces circadian alignment. You're essentially resetting your master clock so sleep cycles progress smoothly without architectural disruptions. At vulnerable transition points. Start implementing rigorous circadian consistency and watch predictable nighttime waking resolve as your biological clock realigns. Part 8. Autonomic dysregulation awareness system. You wake with physical symptoms: racing heart, feeling hot, difficulty breathing, or sense your body is in danger even though your mind knows you're safe. This is your autonomic nervous system stuck in sympathetic activation during sleep. Research on autonomic balance in sleep shows that healthy sleep involves parasympathetic dominance, your rest and digest system. Chronic stress, trauma, or anxiety can prevent this shift, leaving your sympathetic nervous system fight or flight partially active during sleep. Your body essentially can't fully relax even when unconscious, which creates frequent arousals. This is technique number 8 out of 10. The autonomic dysregulation awareness system. Execute this practice for 50 days. Implement a pre-sleep nervous system downshift routine starting 60 minutes before bed. Spend 10 minutes in gentle stretching, 10 minutes in slow breathing, inhale 4, exhale 8, and 10 minutes in progressive muscle relaxation. Track whether this preconditioning reduces nighttime arousals. Also note daytime activities that seem to correlate with worse nights: intense exercise, difficult conversations, screen time. Why this works: You're training your autonomic nervous system to shift into parasympathetic dominance before sleep. Each element of the routine activates vagal tone and reduces sympathetic activity. Over time, your nervous system learns the transition pattern, making parasympathetic dominance during sleep more stable. You're building a neurological bridge into restful states. Start implementing systematic autonomic downshifting and watch sympathetic arousals decrease as your nervous system learns to fully rest. Part 9. Decision Avoidance Processing Protocol. You wake with your mind immediately generating to-do lists, planning, problem-solving, or cycling through unmade decisions. Your brain becomes hyperactive with organizational thinking precisely when you need it quiet. Neuroscientists studying sleep and executive function have found that unfinished tasks and unmade decisions create what's called the Zeigarnik effect. Your brain maintains active processing for incomplete goals. During sleep, when your prefrontal cortex's executive control weakens, this background processing can become conscious and intense enough to cause waking. This is technique number 9 out of 10. The Decision Avoidance Processing Protocol. Your protocol is systematic. Each evening for 35 days, conduct a 10-minute cognitive closure practice. Write down every pending decision, incomplete task, and unresolved plan. For each item, either commit to a specific action time tomorrow or consciously decide it can wait. The key is moving items from active processing required to scheduled or deferred. When you wake with planning thoughts, remind yourself everything is captured and scheduled. No processing needed now. The mechanism completes cognitive loops. By explicitly scheduling or deferring items, you're signaling your prefrontal cortex that active processing can cease. Your brain can release these items from working memory because they're externalized in a trusted system. You're essentially giving your brain permission to stop background processing by proving everything is captured. Start implementing evening cognitive closure and watch nighttime planning intrusions decrease as your brain releases organizational burden. Part 10. Medication and Substance Disruption Recognition Method. You wake during the second half of the night feeling restless, anxious, or experiencing rebound symptoms. This is a natural sleep architecture. It's substance metabolism or withdrawal, creating a mid-sleep disruption. Research on pharmacology and sleep reveals that many substances, alcohol, caffeine, certain medications, cannabis metabolize at specific rates that create predictable sleep disruptions. Alcohol, for instance, metabolizes around 3 to 4 a.m. for evening drinkers, causing rebound wakefulness. Stimulant medications can have similar windows of effect wearing off. This is technique number 10 out of 10. The Medication and Substance Disruption Recognition Method. Here's your intervention for 30 days. Eliminate or time shift one potential sleep disrupting substance. If you drink alcohol with dinner, eliminate it completely. If you consume caffeine past noon, cut it off at 10 a.m. If you take evening medications, ask your doctor about morning administration. Track whether nighttime waking pattern changes. Often the timing correlation between substance metabolism and waking is highly revealing. Why this works? You're running a systematic elimination protocol to identify pharmacological contributors. Many people never connect nighttime waking to substances consumed 8 to 12 hours earlier because the temporal gap obscures the connection. By eliminating variables one at a time, you can identify chemical contributors your body's metabolism timeline reveals. Through predictable waking. Start systematically eliminating potential substance contributors and watch whether specific chemicals have been creating predictable metabolic sleep disruptions. Closing these 10 protocols aren't sleep tips, they're diagnostic and intervention methods for decoding what your body is desperately trying to communicate through nighttime waking. Cortisol dysregulation, emotional suppression, unresolved conflict, existential avoidance, trauma processing, blood sugar instability, circadian misalignment, autonomic dysfunction, decision overload, substance disruption. Together, they form a comprehensive system for understanding that nighttime waking isn't the problem. It's a symptom pointing to specific psychological, physiological, or lifestyle issues requiring attention. Ancient healing traditions recognize that sleep disruption carried meaning and information. Modern neuroscience has revealed the exact mechanisms. Each pattern corresponds to specific biological or psychological processes gone awry. Science has proven what healers always knew. Your body speaks through symptoms. Nighttime waking is neither random nor meaningless. It's your nervous system, endocrine system, and emotional processing systems sending urgent messages about threats, imbalances, or unprocessed material.